Kid Gavilan and Gil Turner would settle their score July 7th, 1952 at the Municipal Stadium in Philadelphia. You see, when you put fighters such as Gil Turner and Kid Gavilan in the same ring, you're going to get one of the greatest welterweight championship fights in ring history is what you got that night. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Kid Gavilan as well as Gil Turner. And many spectators, trainers, historians, Hall of Famers that I have personally spoke with all knew about that fight and all told me that was one of the greatest welterweight championship fights they have ever witnessed. And I've spoken to people who were 86 years old at the time that I spoke with them. I was 13 at the time that I spoke with a lot of those old timers. And they've seen Tony Canzoneri and Barney Ross. And they've seen Jack Dempsey, Gene Tunney. They've seen Jack McVeigh and Harry Smith and Kid Norfolk. They told me that was perhaps one of the greatest fights, let alone welterweight fights of all times. Now, Kid Gavilan admired Kid Chocolate. They called him the Cuban Bong Bong. He was also from Cuba. He liked his style. He liked his finesse. He liked his boxing skill. And Kid Chocolate had the slick hair with the Dixie Peach grease in his hair. He had the three-piece suits and the shiny shoes and the swag that Kid Gavilan admired. And Gil Turner had his own style as well. So I, Scrapbook Boxing, would like to get into that fight as well as the history of Philadelphia with you. Right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Let's take a look. One of the greatest welterweight champions and one of the greatest Philadelphia fighters of all times. Right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Kid Gavilan was born June 6, 1926 in Cuba. He died February 13, 2003, Miami Beach, Florida. He was 77 years of age at the time of his death. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, I had the pleasure of meeting Kid Gavilan. He had some personality on him. And he loved to dance, and he loved to go out and love the nightlife and loved to mingle. He stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches, and he had a 71-inch reach. His name was Geraldo Gonzalez, and he had total bouts of 148 fights, 108 wins, 28 knockouts, 30 losses, 5 draws. And he was in there with the likes of Bobby Dykes, who was from Texas, Johnny Cunningham and Carmen Basilio. They call him the Onion Farmer. Carmen Basilio was from Canastota. That's where you have the great boxing museum. Vince Martinez was from New Jersey. Tony DeMarco from Boston, welterweight champion of the world, had his wars with Carmen Basilio. Del Flanagan had a brother by the name of Glenn Flanagan. The Flanagan brothers were two great fighters. July 11th, 1949, Kid Gavilan would get his shot. Great Ray Robinson. Now, Ray Robinson had held the World Welterweight Championship belt from 1946 to 1950. 1946, Ray Robinson would be in the ring with Ohio's own Tommy Bell. Now, Tommy Bell had a younger brother by the name of Bobby Bell, who was a featherweight. But Tommy Bell would be the only Bell brother to get a shot at the title. And Ray Robinson would end his welterweight reign in 1950 when he would relinquish the title because he wanted to campaign in the middleweight division and go after, at that time, Marcel Cerdan's title. And Ray Robinson would witness Jake LaMotta, man who he had defeated 4 times before that, defeat Marcel Cerdan. And said, boy, I got to get a crack at that title. So when he relinquished the welterweight championship strap, all the contenders in that top 10 would scramble to try and get that belt. So Kid Gavilan would face Johnny Bratton, May 18th, 1951. And at that time, Gavilan was ranked number 1 and Johnny Bratton was ranked number 4. Johnny Bratton was some fighter. Another playboy. I had the pleasure of meeting him. He had an imposter at the Felt Forum pretending to be Johnny Bratton. But I actually met Johnny Bratton several times. Bratton fought from 1944 to 1955. He was a welterweight contender. June 12th and March 17th. He was born September 9th, 1927 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he would move over to Chicago, Illinois. He unfortunately died August 15th, 1993. 4 fighters such as Del Flanagan and Willie Joyce. Johnny Saxton, who was a welterweight champion. Rob Tiger Jones from Yonkers, New York. Bobby Dykes, as I stated, Texas. Lester Felton and Ike Williams. Ike Williams was from Trenton, New Jersey. Had his wars with Bo Jack and Bob Montgomery. Eugene Hairston. And Old Bowls Joe Brown. Ralph Zanelli. Just to name a few. The issue with Johnny Bratton, he had brittle hands. He fought Gavilan 9 rounds with a broken jaw. You see, these are the type of fighters, the courageousness of these fighters that you had to deal with in the 1940s and the 1950s. But Johnny Bratton was some fighter. He would get his shot for the vacant title that was dropped by Sugar Ray Robinson when he would face Kid Gavilan, September 9th. May 18th, 1951. He would fight on May 18th, 1951. He was born September 9th, 1927. Now, Kid Gavilan would meet Texas middleweight Bobby Dykes. Now, what was special about that fight? Took place February 4th, 1952. Kid Gavilan and Bobby Dykes would be the first mixed race match in the South in 60 years since George Dixon and Jack Skelly, Carnival of Champions. That fight took place September 6, 1892. 60 years later, 1952, Kid Gavilan would face Bobby Dykes. The very first mixed race match. Incredible. He would face Bernard Dukeson, who had a brother by the name of Maxie Dukeson. 2 brothers were from Louisiana. Outstanding fighters were the Dukeson brothers. Gavilan would be in the ring with Bo Jack from Augusta, Georgia. Bo Jack had a career record of 121 matches. 91 wins, 44 knockouts, 24 losses with 4 draws. He would face Chalky Wright Charlie Fusari, Freddie Dawson, Pierre Langlois, and Rocky Castellani, just to name a few. When you think of great fighters, think of Kid Gavilan. Think of the time in which he came, the fighters that he fought, the era in which he fought in. Don't be so quick to judge certain names that you happen to watch in your time, because they didn't have to go through what Kid Gavilan and Gil Turner. I don't want to get started. I understand this game well enough. Been around it my entire life. And I know a fighter when I see one in the time in which he came and how he handles his opponents. And those contenders in his time. Gil Turner, for example, was born October 9th, 1930 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He died May 13th, 1996 in Philadelphia. I had the pleasure of meeting him several times. He stood 5 foot 8 inches. He was a welterweight and had a 69-inch reach. He was ranked number 4. And he got that crack with Kid Gavilan. Had a fighting career record of total about 77 fights, 56 wins, 35 knockouts, and 19 losses with 4 draws. Now, Turner was 31-0 with 25 knockouts when he faced Kid Gavilan. And I got to tell you, to give you an example of the type of fighters that Kid Gavilan was in the ring with, he would face Joe Maselli and Izzy Logart, Joey Giemba, and Virgil Akins, Del Flanagan, Yama Bahama, Gene Foreman, Charlie Scott, Al Andrews, and Kid Gavilan, and Bernard Dukeson, Bojack, and many, many, many more. 1955 was some year for Gil Turner. He was in the ring with Bojack in 55 twice. Now, Kid Gavilan and Gil Turner fought in front of a screaming crowd of 39,000 Philadelphia spectators. For the World Welterweight Championship belt. Fought at the Municipal Stadium. It was a record gate of $667. That's a lot for that time. Up until that point, was the most welterweight boxing history. 11 rounds of explosive action, brutality at its best. Kid Gavilan was a real fighter. Because before the fight would even get started, Gil Turner would be on his chest, and he let Kid Gavilan know right away how this fight was going to play out. You see, when you fought and sat in front of the spectators in Philadelphia, you had to perform. You had to show courage and heart. You had to let the opponent who came from out of town know that the city of brotherly love was a town that you did not come and play games with. We're in there to fight, and that's what we're going to do. Now, within the middle rounds, Gil Turner would open his mouth, and in between the white mouth guard, you would have bloody symbolisms of war and brutality and courage and determination. And he would grunt, sucking for oxygen in the smoky arenas. The Philadelphia slugger Gil Turner was desperately sucking for air, but he never stopped throwing punches. He never stopped trying. He had 15 rounds to figure out how to get past the next round. But the 11th round was the most brutal round. The punches that Gil Turner would take was as equal as the punches that Bo Jack would take in 1948 against Ike Williams in the 6th round. Or Jake LaMotta against Sugar Ray Robinson in the 13th round. You see, the Philadelphia spectators got a treat that they would never forget. Gil Turner was hit with 15 unanswered blows, uppercuts and left hooks, straight right hands, body punches and head punches, combinations beyond belief. He was unfortunately hung up against the ropes while a referee would come to his rescue. And Gavilan would have 9 fights in 1952. February 4th, 1952, just to give you an example, Bobby Dykes, Miami Stadium, 15 rounds. February 28th, 52. I mean, you had fights with Don Williams in Boston Garden. 10 rounds, referee was Tommy Rawson. And he had to fight 96-95 for Gavilan. May 19th, 1952, he was in the ring with Ralph Zanelli. Rhode Island Auditorium, Providence. It was on a Monday night. Referee was Ben McCowie. He had a 99-92 for Kid Gavilan. It was a 10-round over the weight bout. Zanelli was 36 years of age and Gavilan, 26. Zanelli couldn't handle the speed, a foot movement, a hand-punching combination of the great Kid Gavilan. May 28th, 1952. On a Wednesday night, he'd be in the ring with Fritzy Bruton. Fritzy Bruton was another good fighter. Fought him at the Fairgrounds Coliseum. 6 rounds, TKO, referee Frank Ford would be forced to stop the fight. July 1952 on a Monday night. He would fight one of his toughest fights in his ring career against Philadelphia's Gil Turner, Municipal Stadium. And it would be a 11-round TKO, referee Pete Tomasco. He had it for Gavilan 6-4 before he stopped the fight. And that was one of the reasons why he stopped it. Because he didn't think that Gil Turner could continue. Because he was hung up against the ropes and hit with combinations body and head. But even though he was getting hit with those punches, he was still throwing punches back. One of the most courageous fighters in the game was Gil Turner. But that wasn't enough for Kid Gavilan. September 13th, 1952, he'd be in the ring with Eduardo Lassie, one of the hardest punchers in that weight division. From Luna Park, Buenos Aires. 10 rounds TKO on a Saturday night. Kid Gavilan, with hand would be raised in victory. Sunday, October 5th, 1952, he'd be in the ring with Billy Graham. Havana, Cuba. 15 rounds. Referee was Mike Rojas. And that was a very, very good fight. He was in the ring with Chuck Davey, and Ernie Durando, Carl Bobo Olsen, Danny Wapner, Johnny Saxton, and Johnny Bratton, Ralph Tiger Jones. But on that night, July 52, Gil Turner, who at that time was the face of Philadelphia, one of the greatest fights in history. I'm going to give you an idea of what Philadelphia was. Now, I was always good at this. I'm going to see if I can remember the names of some of the guys that I'm going to mention to you. Sammy Gauss, Gypsy Joe Harris, Lynn Mathis, Gavilan Sugar Hart, Ray Morris and Billy Arnold, George Godfrey, Tommy Loughran, Matty Feldman, Bobby Green, Midget Wargast, Johnny Hutchison, Jimmy Young, Tommy Spingell, Curtis the Hatchman Shepherd, Blackjack Billy Fox, James Black and Gold Schuler, Phil and Harold Johnson, Billy Jones, Billy Sweet Pea Peacock, Mike Evans, Blackjack Billy Fox, Bobby Green, Johnny Jaddock, Robert Bam Bam Hines, Bernard Executioner Hopkins, Lou Tendler, Kevin Howard, and Danny Garcia, Sweet Georgie Brinton, Harry Kid Brown, Cuba's Bobby Brown, Marty Cohen, Joe Burrell, Benny Bass, and Gene Buffalo, Jack Blackburn, Tony Falcone, Willie Reddish, who's an outstanding trainer, but fantastic fighter as well, Dan Buxoneri. Don't want to leave anyone out, but you had some fighters. Sonny Liston and Buster Drayton, Joey Giardello, Bob Montgomery, Percy Bassett, Meldrick T.N.T. Taylor, Eldrick Taylor, and Myron Taylor, Matthew Saad Muhammad, Byron Davinsky, Harry Lewis, Gary Hilton, Jeff Chandler, Tim Witherspoon, unbelievable, Smoking Joe Frazier, and some of the gyms you had. You had so many gyms in Philadelphia. Philadelphia Boxing Club, Joe Frazier's gym is affiliated with Clover Lane, Eastside Gymnasium, Jupiter Gymnasium, Olympia Gym, 23rd Powell, Joe Hand's Gym, Southside Gymnasium, Augie's Gym, Front Street Gym, Mickey McAvoy Gym, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien's Gym, Hard Knocks Gym, and Martin Luther King's Recreational Center, Slim Gym, East Germantown's Recreation Center. Many of those gyms or locations I have visited. Now, some of the fights that was held in Philadelphia is beyond belief. You had Kid Chocolate versus Benny Bass, fought at the Phillies Ballpark in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. That fight took place July 15th, 1931. Tommy Loughran versus Steve Hamish, Convention Hall, Philadelphia, May 11th, 1932. Tommy Loughran versus Jack Sharkey at the Phillies Ballpark, September 27th, 1933. Benny Bass versus Johnny Jaddock. This was their second fight at the Phillies Ballpark, July 31st, 1934. Benny Bass versus Eddie Cool at the Convention Hall in Philadelphia, December 27, 1933. Tommy Loughran and Ray and Bellatier, the Phillies Ballpark. These are outside arenas. June 20th, 1935. Leroy Haynes and Al Latour. Al Latour was he was a very good Jewish heavyweight. He was in the ring with Joe Louis. I had a friend by the name of Teddy who was good friends with Al Latour. But that was their second fight. The Phillies Ballpark, September 15th, 1936. Gene Tunney versus Jack Dempsey, the first fight. It was at the Philadelphia Stadium, September 23rd, 1926. John Henry Lewis versus Al Latour, second fight. Convention Hall, Philadelphia, February 8th, 1937. John Henry Lewis and Al Latour, third fight, June 15th, 1937, at the Phillies Ballpark in Philadelphia. Davey Day versus Tommy Spingell. Now, Sammy Ingout would face Davey Day for the vacant NBA. But Davey Day would be in the ring with Tommy Spingal at the Motor Square Garden, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, March 28, 1938. Two-ton Tony Galento from New Jersey versus Leroy Haynes, Convention Hall, Philadelphia, November 18, 1937. He had Tony Galento, John Henry Lewis, Municipal Stadium, Philadelphia, July 26, 1938. Tony Galento versus Lou Nova, Municipal Stadium, September 15, 1939. Benny Leonard and Alex Hart, Phillies Ballpark, July 9th, 1923. So on the verge of his comeback, before he was unfortunately stopped by Jimmy McLaurin. Quick note. Benny Leonard had lost his money in the stock market in 1929. Benny Leonard was one of the greatest lightweight champions of all time. I have him alongside with Joe Gans. And Benny Leonard fought them all. I have him ranked number 9 along with Tony Canzaneri and the Scotch Wop, Johnny Dundee. Lou Tendler versus Jack Zivik, one of the Zivik brothers. They fought at Scrapbook Park in Philadelphia, June 8th, 1925. Benny Bass versus Babe Herman, September 1st, 1926, Scrapbook Park, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, Harry Blitman versus Tony Canzaneri, Philly Ballpark, June 27th, 1928. If you don't know about Harry Blitman, do your research on Harry Blitman. I would go through it, but I want to focus on some fights that took place in Philadelphia. Harry Blitman was some fighter. Benny Bass and Harry Blitman. Phillies Ballpark, Scrapbook Park, September 10th, 1928. Fought him twice. Benny Bass versus Phil McGraw, the Arena in Philadelphia, October 29th, 1928. Pete Nebo versus Mike Dundee, the Arena, Philadelphia, January 7th, 1929. Benny Bass and Johnny Farr fought on a Monday night at the Arena, Philadelphia, April 29th, 1929. Now, what's amazing is you can get an 8-row ticket for $3 during those days. Al Walker and George Gottfried, 2 colored heavyweight champions. That's what it was called, the colored heavyweight champion. It was at the Arena in Philadelphia, January 7th, 1929. It was on the Monday night. Kid Chocolate. You know, unbelievable. He was June 5th, 1929 at the Scrapbook Park, Philadelphia. It was on a Monday evening. You see, you had fights every single night in New York and in Philadelphia. All over the world. Boxing was the mecca of sporting events. I mean, George Gottfried and Jimmy Blythe, Philadelphia Ballpark, June 3rd, 1929. Paulie Walker versus Jack Gallagher, New Broadway AC in Philadelphia, November 14th, 1929. Tommy Ryan versus Jack O'Brien on a Wednesday night, National AC, Philadelphia, January 27th, 1904. Yeah, Tom Sharkey versus Jock Malone. Saturday night, Interstate AC, Philadelphia, February 27th, 1904. Dave Smith, Olympic AA, Philadelphia, November 8th, 1912, against Leo Florian Hawk. Fought him on a Friday evening. Terry McGovern versus Battling Nelson, Wednesday, National AC, Philadelphia, March 14th, 1906. Benny Leonard versus Johnny Kilburn, Scrapbook Park, Philadelphia. July 25th, 1917 on a Wednesday evening. Kid Williams and Harry Smith, Olympic AA, Philadelphia. Wednesday, November 22nd, 1912. Sonny Liston versus Floyd Patterson, the second fight, Convention Center. Georgie Benton versus Johnny Morris on a Monday night. The Arena in Philadelphia, May 18th, 1964. George Benton fought Jimmy Ellis, the Arena. I'm just giving you an example of what Philadelphia had to offer. And that's what Kid Gavilan had to deal with when he would face Gil Turner. He had to fight a Philadelphia fighter. And it turned out to be one of the greatest welterweight championship matches in the history of the game for 11 brutal rounds. You see, that's boxing. That's what it means to be a fighter. When that bell rings, you go and you get your job done. But you're going to have to face a man who has the same desires that you have. The fighters during those years fought under different conditions, different set of circumstances. These men that you're looking at didn't have the same opportunities. But they made out of what they had. And the names that I mentioned to you, the Tommy Ryans and the Jack Roots, and the Tom Sharkeys, and the Tony Canzonares, Pete Nebos, Al Walkers, Kid Chocolates, Benny Bass, Lou Taylor. These fighters, Joey Giardello, you didn't walk in the ring and just get a victory. And if you've been paying attention, I told you they fought on a Monday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, Thursday night, Tuesday night. They never stopped fighting. They would have 16 fights in a month against some of the most brutal fighters in the history of the game. Think about your history before you rate a top 10. Think about your history before you call certain fighters the best of all times. Think about your history before you claim to understand the game of boxing. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm Scrapbook Boxing. I've been studying this game for over 45 years. I've spoken to real historians. When I was 13 years old, I visited a lot of places that I just mentioned to you. Yeah, most of them were torn down. But I stood on the soils of the land of some of the greatest fighters that participated in. I met a lot of the men that I mentioned to you, either in nursing homes or in dinners, Hall of Fames. A lot of the trainers, ex-fighters, relatives. I've seen memorabilia beyond belief. Gloves worn by Jim Corbett. Mouth guards. Everything you can think of. I understand this game. Thanks for paying attention. Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to these fighters. Salute to my subscribers. Peace.